The Philistines were renowned not just for their conflicts with the Israelites, but for their cultural and technological advancements. They were among the so-called Sea Peoples, mysterious mariners who settled in Canaan around the 12th century BCE. Their skills in metallurgy and pottery were unmatched, showcasing a society that was both innovative and formidable. Unlike the often nomadic cultures surrounding them, the Philistines built robust, well-planned cities like Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Gath. These cities were powerhouses of trade and military might, strategically located on the ancient trade routes between Egypt and the Levant. Their prowess wasn't just in craftsmanship and trade, but also in governance. The Philistine Pentapolis, a league of 5 cities, formed a unique political entity that was a significant player in regional politics. Their social structure and governance might hint at the early forms of what we today might call a nation-state. But it wasn't all about prosperity and power. The Philistines were often depicted by their adversaries, the Israelites, as the ultimate other, pagan, uncircumcised, and perennially at odds with the chosen people of Yahweh. This enmity, preserved through biblical scriptures, has colored the perception of this ancient people, influencing how history remembers them. This ancient narrative sets the stage for a deep-seated legacy of conflict, where names and identities are inherited, transformed, and repurposed through the ages. Understanding this complex tapestry is crucial as we peel back the layers of history to reveal how ancient enmities are reinterpreted in the modern battle for land and identity. The land that was once home to the Philistines now comprises part of modern-day Israel and the Palestinian territories, a region renowned for its historical and strategic importance. This strip of land along the Mediterranean coast, encompassing today's Gaza Strip and parts of southern Israel, has been a crossroads of civilizations for thousands of years. Its value comes not only from its fertile lands and access to maritime trade routes, but also from its strategic military position, controlling access between Africa and Asia. During the time of the Philistines, this area was a bustling nexus, connecting the empires of ancient Egypt to the north with Mesopotamia to the east. The Philistines capitalized on this, exerting control over the flow of goods and culture, which made them both wealthy and envied. Fast forward to today, and the geographic stakes remain remarkably similar. This land is still at the heart of geopolitical strategies, with modern cities and infrastructure overlapping ancient sites. Every road, every settlement built here is layered upon histories of commerce, conquest, and conflict. The enduring value of this region explains why it has been the epicenter of so much historical conflict and why it remains one of the most contested pieces of real estate in the world. The modern conflict between Israel and Palestine, much like the ancient skirmishes between Israelites and Philistines, revolves significantly around who gets to control this pivotal land. The Philistines were known for their distinct art and architecture, which still intrigues archaeologists today. Their pottery, decorated with intricate designs and vivid colors, speaks volumes about their craftsmanship and aesthetic sensibilities. These artifacts provide a window into a society that valued beauty and functionality, a stark contrast to the harsh portrayal in biblical texts. Culturally, the Philistines were also unique. They consumed a diet rich in varied proteins and grains, enjoyed music and dance, and even had their own religious practices, worshipping gods like Dagon and Ashtoreth. This cultural richness suggests a complex society, capable of both fierce warfare and refined living. Socially, the Philistines were organized and advanced. They were among the first in the region to use iron extensively, giving them an edge in tools and weaponry. Their cities were well planned, with evidence of advanced urban planning that included streets laid out in grids, separate residential and industrial areas, and sophisticated water systems. This glimpse into their society challenges the often one-dimensional portrayal of the Philistines as mere adversaries of the Israelites. Instead, we see a vibrant community with its own complexities and contributions to the cultural tapestry of the ancient Near East. While archaeological evidence paints a picture of a sophisticated and vibrant Philistine society, their portrayal in biblical narratives tells a different story, a narrative crafted by their adversaries, the Israelites. In the Hebrew Bible, the Philistines are frequently depicted as the arch-enemies of the Israelites. These texts, written from the perspective of the Israelites, often portray the Philistines as invaders, oppressors, and pagans, clashing fundamentally with the monotheistic beliefs of the Israelites. One of the most famous stories is that of David and Goliath, a young shepherd boy who defeats Goliath, a giant Philistine warrior. This tale has transcended religious texts to become a universal symbol of the underdog overcoming great odds. Yet, it also reinforces the image of the Philistines as formidable and somewhat brutish foes. The narrative roles assigned to the Philistines in these stories serve not just to provide moral lessons, but also to forge a collective identity for the Israelites, distinguishing them from their neighbors through conflicts that underscored their divine favor and destiny. These ancient scripts, laden with moral and divine imperatives, have echoed through the centuries, influencing how successive generations view the Philistines. This portrayal has implications even today, as the historical enmity described in the Bible can sometimes color modern perceptions and conflicts between Jews and Arabs in the region. By understanding these biblical depictions, we can see how history is often written by the victors, or at least by those who write the stories. The Philistines, known to us primarily through their enemies' words, remind us that history is not just about facts, but about narratives. Narratives that can influence politics and identity for millennia. After centuries of flourishing culture and frequent conflict, the Philistine civilization began to wane. The reasons behind their decline are a complex tapestry of historical events and environmental challenges that ultimately led to their absorption into the empires that conquered their lands. The Philistines' decline was precipitated by a combination of factors. Firstly, their strategic position made them a target for emerging empires. Over time, they faced invasions from powerful neighbors, including the Assyrians and later the Babylonians, each seeking control over the lucrative trade routes that the Philistines once dominated. In addition to military conquests, environmental changes played a role. Archaeological evidence suggests that climate shifts, possibly including droughts and earthquakes, disrupted the agricultural and economic stability of Philistine cities, making it harder for them to maintain their independence. Social and political integration with neighboring cultures also contributed to their decline. As the Philistines were absorbed into larger empires, their distinct identity began to dilute. Over time, they became indistinguishable from the other peoples of the region, their unique culture blending into the tapestry of the ancient Near East. The final blow to the distinctiveness of the Philistine identity came with the conquests of Alexander the Great, and later the Romans, who rebranded much of the region under new administrative and cultural frameworks. The name Palestine, derived from Philistine, was used by the Romans in an attempt to sever Jewish ties to the land, further complicating the historical narrative. The term Palestine has its roots in the ancient word Philistia, but its journey through history is as complex as the region itself. The Greeks were among the first to use the term Palestine, in a manner resembling its modern form. Referring to the area as Palestine, they acknowledged the historical legacy of the Philistines, even as the original inhabitants' identity was diminishing. However, it was under the Romans that the name Palestine gained a more political connotation. After the Jewish revolts of the 1st and 2nd centuries, the Roman emperors sought to diminish Jewish ties to the land. In renaming Judea to Syria, Palestina, they not only referenced the ancient enemies of the Israelites, but also attempted to erase the rebellious identity of the Jews. This renaming was as much a political act as it was a geographical one, a deliberate strategy to suppress any resurgence of Jewish nationalism by overlaying it with a name associated with ancient adversaries. Throughout the Byzantine and Islamic periods, the name Palestine continued to be used intermittently, although often overshadowed by other regional designations. It wasn't until the modern era, particularly during the British Mandate in the early 20th century, that Palestine became the official designation for the territory encompassing modern-day Israel and the Palestinian territories. Today, Palestine represents not just a geographic area, but a symbol of national identity for Palestinians, embodying their historical claims and aspirations for statehood amidst ongoing conflict. Following the Roman era, the region saw a transformative chapter with the Arab conquests in the 7th century. These conquests introduced a new cultural and religious landscape that would significantly shape the identity of the land for centuries to come. In 636 AD, Arab forces achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of Yarmouk, effectively bringing the region under Islamic rule. This was not merely a military conquest, but also a cultural revolution, as Islam spread rapidly across the territory. Under Islamic rule, the region known as Palestine flourished as a part of the various Islamic empires, from the Umayyads and Abbasids to the Fatimids. Each dynasty left its mark, embedding Islamic cultural, legal, and architectural traditions into the fabric of the land. The introduction of Arabic as the lingua franca and the spread of Islamic practices reshaped the social and religious landscape, integrating the region more deeply into the broader Islamic world. One of the enduring legacies of Islamic rule was the establishment of Jerusalem as a holy city in Islam, alongside Mecca and Medina. The construction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount signifies the deep spiritual and historical connections that Muslims have with the city. However, the changing rulers over the centuries, from the Crusaders to the Ottomans, continued to shape the region's complex identity, each layer contributing to the rich tapestry of cultures and beliefs that define it today. The influence of Islamic rule is a critical piece of the puzzle in understanding the current socio-political and religious dynamics of the Middle East. It helps explain the deep-rooted connections and the sometimes contentious claims that multiple groups hold over this land. As the Middle Ages waned, the Ottoman Empire emerged as the new power in the Middle East, bringing Palestine under its control in 1516. This period marked yet another significant chapter in the region's long history, influencing its administrative structure and cultural landscape. Under Ottoman administration, Palestine was organized into several districts, part of a larger province with Damascus at its center. This administrative structure played a crucial role in integrating the region further into the vast Ottoman network, stretching from the Middle East into Eastern Europe. Culturally, the Ottomans introduced various architectural styles and fortified many cities within Palestine, leaving a lasting legacy that can still be seen in its historic buildings and city layouts. The Ottomans also encouraged agricultural development and the resettlement of diverse peoples into the region, which added layers to its demographic and cultural composition. However, by the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire began to weaken. Administrative inefficiency and corruption led to economic decline, setting the stage for external powers to intervene in the region. This period also saw the rise of nationalistic sentiments among various ethnic and religious groups within the empire. The geopolitical significance of Palestine attracted European interests, particularly those of the British and the French, who were positioning themselves for influence in the region as the Ottomans' power waned. This interest set the stage for the dramatic changes that would come with the 20th century, including the British Mandate. The conclusion of World War I and the subsequent Treaty of Sèvres and the Treaty of Lausanne marked the end of Ottoman sovereignty over its Arab provinces, including Palestine. The League of Nations' approval of the British Mandate for Palestine in 1920 ushered in a new era, fundamentally reshaping the region's political landscape. This transition from Ottoman rule to British Mandate was not just a shift in governance, but also a transformation in the national aspirations of the region's people, setting the stage for the complex and often violent struggles for statehood that characterize the modern Middle East. With the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the onset of British control, the region entered a tumultuous period. The British Mandate, established by the League of Nations in 1920, marked a significant turning point for Palestine. The Mandate system was intended to administer former Ottoman lands under the principle of preparing them for self-governance. However, in Palestine, this goal was complicated by the Balfour Declaration of 1917, in which Britain expressed support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, while also ensuring that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities. This declaration ignited a surge of Jewish immigration to Palestine, driven by Zionist aspirations and the dire circumstances of Jews in Europe, particularly following the rise of Nazism. This influx changed the demographic balance in the region and intensified conflicts between Jewish and Arab communities. The British struggled to maintain control as tensions escalated. Their dual promises to both Jews and Arabs proved untenable, leading to widespread unrest, violent revolts, and tragic confrontations throughout the Mandate period. Administratively, the British implemented significant changes, including land policies that impacted ownership and usage and infrastructure projects that modernized the region, but also fueled further disputes over land rights and economic control. As World War II ended, the pressure mounted on Britain to resolve the conflicting promises it had made. The horrors of the Holocaust and the desperate plight of Jewish refugees intensified international pressure to provide a homeland for Jewish survivors, while Arab nationals simultaneously pushed for independence and sovereignty. In 1947, unable to forge a peaceful solution, Britain turned the problem over to the United Nations, which proposed partitioning Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. This plan was accepted by Jewish leaders, but rejected by Arab leaders, setting the stage for the founding of Israel and the ensuing Arab-Israeli wars. The British Mandate period thus ended not with a peaceful transition envisioned, but in a violent struggle that reshaped the geopolitical and demographic landscapes of the Middle East, leaving a legacy of conflict that persists to this day. As the British Mandate struggled to manage the rising tensions and conflicting promises made to Jews and Arabs, a distinct Palestinian identity began to crystallize, fueled by both a reaction to Zionist immigration and a broader Arab awakening. Palestinian nationalism, as we understand it today, emerged in response to multiple pressures: increasing Jewish immigration, perceived threats to Arab land and culture, and the impact of global events such as World War I and later World War II. These elements combined to forge a nationalistic movement that sought to assert a unique Palestinian identity and political autonomy. Key figures in early Palestinian nationalism include Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who became a central political and religious leader advocating for Arab unity against Zionist ambitions. His leadership during the 1936–39 Arab Revolt marked a significant point in the rise of Palestinian nationalism. The Arab Revolt not only marked a militant resistance against the British and Zionist populations, but also sparked a greater political consciousness among Palestinians, leading to the creation of nationalist groups and political parties. By the time the British Mandate was nearing its end, the Palestinian national movement was characterized by its own symbols, narratives, and leaders. However, it faced significant challenges, including internal divisions and a lack of international support compared to the Zionist movement, which had developed robust global backing. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War, following the UN's partition plan, was a pivotal moment for Palestinian nationalism. The outcome of the war and the ensuing Nakba, where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced, deeply influenced the national consciousness and became a central element of Palestinian identity. The tragedy of the Nakba and the ongoing struggle for statehood transformed Palestinian nationalism from a reactive movement into a central facet of the broader Arab-Israeli conflict, shaping regional politics and international relations for decades to come. Today, Palestinian nationalism continues to evolve, influenced by historical grievances, ongoing conflicts, and the ever-changing landscape of Middle Eastern politics. Its roots in the early 20th century set the stage for the complex dynamics that we see in current events. The end of World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust brought global attention to the plight of Jewish refugees and intensified the push for a Jewish homeland, culminating in the United Nations proposal to partition Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states in 1947. The UN partition plan sought to create a viable solution to the long-standing Jewish-Arab conflict in Palestine. The plan allocated specific territories for the new Jewish state, an Arab state, and an internationally administered Jerusalem. While Jewish leaders accepted the plan, it was vehemently rejected by the Arab leadership, both within Palestine and in surrounding Arab countries. This rejection led directly to the outbreak of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, often referred to by Palestinians as the Nakba, or catastrophe, which saw the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, an event that has deeply marked the Palestinian collective memory and identity. The creation of the State of Israel in May 1948 marked a momentous change. Declared independently by David Ben-Gurion, it triggered a full-scale war as neighboring Arab states intervened, aiming to prevent the establishment of a Jewish state and support the Palestinian Arabs. Despite being outnumbered and newly formed, the Israeli Defense Forces managed to not only survive, but expand their territory beyond the original UN partition proposal, capturing key areas designated for the Arab state. The war ended with armistice agreements in 1949, establishing new borders that significantly differed from those outlined by the UN. These borders, known as the Green Line, created new realities on the ground, but left the status of Jerusalem and the rights of Palestinian refugees unresolved. The aftermath of the war and the establishment of Israel dramatically altered the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. For Israelis, it was the fulfillment of a long-sought homeland. For Palestinians, it was the loss of their land and the beginning of a prolonged statelessness and diaspora. This pivotal period not only reshaped the region, but also set the stage for the ongoing conflict and the complex web of negotiations, peace efforts, and hostilities that continue to define the Israeli-Palestinian relations to this day.